You're not going to want to miss this 2023 UFO News Year-End Review because I'm going to do things a little bit different. Instead of just going over the top UFO news reports for this year, I'm going to be highlighting the big events that occurred as they relate to the Elizondo and Mellon 5 pillars of emphasis. And I'll be giving each of those categories a grade. But first, the award for the best prediction of 2023 that came true goes to Jeremy Corbell and George Knapp. Because just 2 days before the start of 2023, they were on Theories of Everything and made the following statements.
Jeremy and I are aware of some of these whistleblowers who've been standing by, ready to chime in and tell Congress and others what they know.
Talking about our government physically reverse engineering physical hardware that they suspect is from another world.
The closer Congress and the public get to answers, the closer we get to actually seeing or learning about the goodies, the metamaterials, pieces of scrap metal of unknown origin, craft, maybe bodies, the harder the pushback is going to be.
Of course, these predictions turned into reality because of whistleblower David Grush stepping forward, followed by pushback that came in the form of the gutting of the UAP Disclosure Amendment that was brought to you by the congressman that represents the headquarters of the Air Force, Mike Turner. Now, let's move on to the top stories of 2023. The first pillar of emphasis is legislative engagement, which is another way of saying getting Congress involved. I gotta give 2023 an optimistic A+ in this category, because both the House and the Senate submitted bipartisan-sponsored UAP amendments to the National Defense Authorization Act, with the Schumer Rounds UAP Disclosure Act setting the standard by which future UAP-related legislation will be judged by. But this pillar also shined brighter than an iridium flare in the night sky because of the involvement from both sides of the aisle that we saw during the July congressional hearings. Even AOC went to Instagram to make a video about it.
Why now? Why this? Why is this happening right now? This is a story of organizing. I don't know what to tell you. People may want to be cynical about that, but truly, there are a lot of people in this country who are very interested in this topic. And there has been increasing pressure and organizing that transcends party lines.
And lastly, the creation of the UAP caucus and their subsequent press conferences leads me to believe that the Congress is going to be engaged in this topic for years to come. The second pillar of emphasis is senior executive engagement, i.e. the president. Although I want to give this year a big fat F in this category, I got to give 2023 a mediocre C-, but only because Balloongate fell out of the sky and into the UFO community's lap. This series of events forced Joe Biden to stand behind a podium and address the American public about the topic of UAPs, instead of tucking tail and running away like he's done in the past. The White House even ordered the creation of
an interagency team to study the broader policy implications for detection, analysis, and disposition of unidentified aerial objects that pose either safety or security risks.
A team that hasn't produced any publicly available results yet. And I don't think they ever will. And even though the objects that were shot down in February are most likely mundane in nature, it did cause the leaders of the US and Canada to work together and speak publicly about unidentified objects. And this cooperation also bleeds over into the next category. The third pillar of emphasis is international engagement. And I'm giving this year a B, as in a beginning. And that's because in January it was announced that the San Marino Parliament, with a little help from Project Titan, voted to submit a proposal to the UN Secretary General to establish a permanent UFO office at the United Nations, which could be the beginning of a process that would result in global conferences being held in the future to scientifically study UFOs. Before we get to the fourth pillar of emphasis, I'd like to go ahead and present this year's award for the best follow-through performance. This year's lucky recipient is none other than Gary 100% Nolan, who back in May stated,
well, what happens next is, what you're actually seeing is what's happening next is the professionalization of this.
Gary followed through on those comments by putting together the Stellar Soul Foundation conference that was held this November. The lineup of speakers at this conference was unbelievable. And I believe that this event just set the precedent for how future professional level events will occur in the upcoming years as the UFO topic continues to evolve and be treated with the seriousness that it deserves. The fourth pillar of emphasis is mainstream media engagement, and I'm going to have to give this year a pretty solid B. Balloongate inadvertently got the media to put the spotlight on UAPs. NASA's UAP press conferences got a lot of media coverage. The Netflix docuseries Encounters even topped the charts. And News Nation dedicated themselves to being the leader in their field on the UFO topic. And they even brought Ross Coulthart on their team recently. But I gotta deduct a few points because when News Nation recently hosted the Republican primary debates, they neglected to ask one single UFO-related question, which was possibly due to the following response that Chris Christie gave at a previous debate.
I get the UFO question?
Yeah, you do.
Come on,
There
man.
you go. No,
Which is an indication that both mainstream media as well as the presidential candidates, possibly with the exception of Vivek, are not fully engaged on the UFO topic yet. But alternative media did a bang-up job covering the UFO topic this year, with the crescendo being David Grush's appearance on the Joe Rogan Experience. And we can't forget all the in-depth coverage that all the YouTubers, podcasters, and TikTokers gave the UFO topic this year. But when you compare the depth and the volume of the alternative media coverage of the UFO topic to the mainstream media cursory coverage, it's disappointing. Speaking of disappointed, this year's recipient of the I Don't Even Know Who You Are Anymore award goes to NASA Administrator Bill Nelson, who had previously inspired us all by the comments that he had been making, such as,
"Who am I to say that planet Earth is the only location of a life form that is civilized and organized like ours?"
only to turn around and misrepresent and dismiss David Grush's recent statements, as well as dancing around James Fox's question about whether NASA has a plan in place to inform the public if they do find evidence of a non-human intelligence. So maybe somebody got to him and put a muzzle on him, because, Mr. Nelson, I don't even know who you are anymore. And last but not least, the fifth pillar of emphasis is public engagement, engaging the masses. And this is the only pillar that everyone watching this video can directly impact. In other words, you can make a difference. Even though I wanted to give us an A for this year, I'm going to have to limit us to a B+ because I know we could have done better. And we did have a little problem with consistency because hardly anybody showed up to the April Senate congressional hearings on UAPs. But the masses made up for that in July when the UFO community descended on Washington to attend the House UAP congressional hearings. And I do think that this level of engagement is only going to increase over time. And that's great, but we have to ensure that we carry ourselves in a respectful and professional manner. Because mainstream media is going to be quick to highlight any outlandish behavior that occurs amongst our masses, so keep it classy. We've also seen a lot of new content creators step onto the scene this year. But it's the silent majority of the people that watch UFO content that have the real power to move this conversation forward. Your support in the form of likes, shares, and follows makes all the difference in the world to content creators and the algorithm. And best of all, it's absolutely free to do so. So what are you waiting for? Get engaged and get to clicking. So that's a wrap for 2023. But of course, I'd be remiss if I didn't applaud David Grush for everything that he did for the UFO community this year. He's definitely the UAP MVP. So raise a glass with me and let's toast to a memorable 2023 and let's hope for more in 2024.